The other thing that you should have as an adult human being of any gender is a thick enough skin to like let words roll off your back if you're in, like, if you go to a comedy show, which is effectively what this is. Yes, it's an award show, but like all of the hosting parts of the award show, at least, especially when you hire somebody like Chris Rock, like they didn't hire Matt Damon to do this, right? Like they didn't hire Daniel Day-Lewis to come up and host the show.
Yeah.
They hired a comedian. They've hired comedians for decades. Billy Crystal did this show for years and years and years. They've had Ricky Gervais host the show. They've had other comedians host the show. Like, this is not the first time that all of these people, and Will Smith's been to probably 20 of these at this point, right? Like, they go to the Oscars every year. You know that what happens is, especially the people who are in kind of the first couple rows are going to get roasted. That's how it goes. And like part of the deal with going to a comedy show or going to a show of any kind is, you know, if you sit in the splash zone, right? Like you're going to get splashed, and you probably shouldn't complain to Gallagher that you got watermelon bits on you. Like that's just not how it works. Like, you know, like bring a poncho is what I'm saying. Right. And if you don't do that, then it's kind of on you. So I don't have a lot of sympathy for this idea that like, oh, you know, like Jada, like, okay, maybe the whole crowd, if Chris Rock went too far, if it was a tasteless joke or whatever, then the whole crowd can like, boo, you know, like, lame, bad form, buddy. Right.
Yeah.
But that's the reaction.
Don't give them the laughs. Like that is
right. Don't give them the laughs. The joke bombs.
A comedian has to be able to read the room, but if you're not giving true and accurate signals back to the comedian, if you're laughing at jokes that you don't actually think are funny, they're going to keep telling those jokes.
Well, and it may very well be the case that people actually did think it was funny until, and Will Smith was laughing at it. I mean, it seems like it was funny until they cut to Jada Pinkett Smith's face, and she didn't think it was funny. And then everybody was like, "Oh, we feel bad about it," which is fine. That's a fine reaction, but that reaction is the appropriate one, which is booze, right? Like it's no, okay, we all feel bad, right? As poor taste, shouldn't have done it, and then Chris Rock can move on to some other subject, and we move on. But like. Yeah, when you turn around and go punch somebody, like that's not the right answer to any of this. I want to read what a friend of mine said. I'll read what my buddy Logan Albright said first. I got two things I want to read. One is in line with what you said a minute ago, which is Logan was making sort of a sarcastic point here, but he's like, masculinity is toxic. Women are strong and independent and don't need men to protect them. Will Smith is a romantic and chivalrous hero for sucker punching a comedian to defend his woman's honor. Like, and he goes, everyone in my Facebook feed right now. It's like, you can't have those things at the same time. Like those are contradictory concepts. So either we are going to reduce the amount of violence and sort of the rush to violence that people feel, or we're going to praise people for this kind of behavior. And it seems like we're going the latter. And then 2 weeks from now, we'll complain about how, how men are too violent or whatever. The other thing I wanted to read was from my buddy Yakov Markel. It said, if Will Smith had walked up there, and this is something I really appreciate. I really value this. It said, if Will Smith had walked up there, put his arm around Chris Rock's shoulder, and whispered the following words into his ear, it would have been infinitely more valuable and effective at Will's claimed goals of, quote, being a light for others. Which, by the way, pause for a second. During his like Oscar speech, he like sort of apologized and he said how much he wants to be, a beacon of hope and light and friendship and warmth and blah, blah, blah. And it was very like, whatever. It's just like 30 minutes after you slapped a guy. So it's like, come on, dude. Anyway. It would have been infinitely more valuable and effective at Will's claimed goal of, quote, being a light for others. Said, hey, I love you, bro. And you're funny as hell, but she's suffering from an autoimmune disorder that's causing hair loss. She's been public about it. Not your fault, but she's very sensitive about it. And some kind of words and an apology would be much appreciated. know that we really appreciate your friendship. Then hug him again, walk off stage like a king, and let Chris Rock take the opportunity to respond with grace, respect, and kindness. I mean, honestly, you can de-escalate things. Like, it's not impossible. You don't have to just hit somebody. Like, that's not your only option. And it's not your only option while doing the thing that you claim to be doing, which is defending the person you care about, right? Like, defense of somebody that you care about from an insult does not have to be violence.
No.
You can still defend that person, but you can defend them with kind words, actually, which is kind of funny. And in some ways it seems counterintuitive to people, but it really also works. It is insanely disarming for people who have done something wrong and who've done something insulting or aggressive. It is insanely disarming for you to turn around and treat that person with respect and kindness.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is weird for them. And they have to then confront the idea that like that you're meeting them with just a much different vibe. Yeah. And they either have to match that vibe or they have to go harder the direction that they were in. But especially in a public setting, going harder after somebody was like, hey, man, I understand, but like, it's not cool. You know?
My brother used to moonlight as a bouncer at a late night bar. And he's a big dude. He's like 6'3", probably 230. Like, he's a big guy, but he's also a teddy bear and doesn't really enjoy the idea of violence in general. So when he would deal with rowdy drunks and they would be like verbally abusive or maybe act like they're going to take a swing at him or anything like that, he would just be like, hey man, that really hurts my feelings. Like, that's not cool. And it would immediately end the confrontation and be like, oh, God, you're right. I'm so sorry. You know what? I'm drunk. I'm just going to go.
Yeah, I've seen that happen. I've seen that play out in real life a ton of times. I've also seen it play out on the internet a ton of times. I mean, I've used this.
I've done it too.
Like, you, especially like I reply to a lot of YouTube comments, and one of the things that I try to do, you're never going to be perfect about this. Like, emotions get in the way. It happens. You're going to get mad sometimes, whatever. But what I try to do, especially with YouTube comments, and especially in the context of me representing Fee, because that's an area where I have a pretty important stake in like making sure that I'm acquitting myself like reasonably well. So like with Fee, and when I reply to people, if somebody comes in really hot, a lot of times my answer is, well, hey, why don't you tell me what it is that you're actually upset by? Like, what is it specifically that you dislike about what I said? Because people just come in like, like basically shouting names at me and whatever. Yeah, like, that happens. And sometimes I will reply, let's see if we can get to the bottom of what we disagree with. Mm-hmm. Let's see if we can have a conversation about this. And that changes the context of the discussion dramatically, like right away. And what I find is most often, not always, but most often, the whole tenor goes from, F you and like a string of insults to, oh, wow, man, I didn't really expect you to reply, but like, here's some things that made me mad about this. And then I can go, well, okay, let's talk about that. And then it immediately de-escalates everything down to, if I took a different approach, if I took the approach that was like, oh yeah, well, yeah, F you, buddy, right? Then we're in this battle that cannot go anywhere but down, let's say, right? It can't go anywhere. It can't do anything but get worse. All we're doing is just trading insults at each other. And you've seen that play out online a million times too. But like when you see somebody de-escalate that kind of thing and turn something that starts really hot, turn it into a conversation, like that's where you want to be. And I don't know. It's just odd to me that like here a major celebrity had a chance to model that kind of behavior. Didn't do it. Not terribly surprised by that. But then the whole establishment sort of like is praising him for